I am Aaliyah, 33 years old, and last Christmas changed my life forever. After working harder than ever, I returned home hoping my family would finally recognize my efforts. Instead, I watched my younger sister Heather unwrap keys to a brand new Audi. While I received a small box, inside was a pink piggy bank and a single-dollar bill. My mother smiled warmly, saying, "That is our contribution to your future home, sweetie." That night, I packed my suitcase and left without saying goodbye. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a message. Before I tell you where I went that night, let me know in the comments where you are watching from and subscribe so you do not miss what happened next in my journey to self-worth. Growing up as the firstborn daughter in the Wilson family was an exercise in invisibility. Our suburban Portland, Oregon home looked picture-perfect from the outside, with its neatly trimmed hedges and seasonal wreaths. My parents, Robert and Diane Wilson, now 56 and 54 respectively, always maintained appearances while hiding our family dynamic from neighbors and friends. The pattern started early. When I was 7 and Heather was just born, the attention shift was immediate and permanent. My straight ass received brief nods while Heather got ice cream celebrations for participation awards. I remember my 10th birthday when my parents forgot to buy a cake because they were busy shopping for baby Heather's nursery furniture. When I mentioned it tearfully at dinner, my mother hastily stuck a candle in a dinner roll and called it sufficient. "Amanda, you are old enough to understand that your sister needs more attention," my father would say whenever I expressed hurt feelings. "Be the responsible one." You are the big sister, and responsible I became. By 12, I was preparing simple meals when Mom was busy with Heather. By 14, I was regularly babysitting while my parents attended Heather's dance recital or took her shopping. Somehow my debate team finals never warranted their attendance despite the trophies I brought home. "We know you will do great without us there," my mother would say, squeezing my shoulder. "You are our independent girl." Independence became my identity, not by choice, but by necessity. I learned to help myself with homework, navigate college applications alone, and secure my own transportation to school events. Meanwhile, Heather received driving lessons from Dad, extensive tutoring when her grades slipped, and constant encouragement for her modest achievements. High school graduation illustrated our different worlds perfectly. My parents hosted a lavish party for me because that is what parents should do, but spent the evening introducing Heather to everyone, bragging about her middle school art project that won a local contest. My acceptance to the state university on partial scholarship was mentioned as an afterthought. College brought more of the same pattern, but with financial consequences that follow me to this day. I worked 20 hours weekly at the campus coffee shop while maintaining Dean List status. Summers meant picking up full-time retail work to save for the upcoming semester. Meanwhile, my parents covered Heather's tuition completely when she enrolled 3 years later, citing that art programs are more demanding and leave no time for work. I graduated with honors in architectural design and $27,000 in student loans. At the ceremony, my parents arrived late because Heather had a minor fender bender that morning. They missed my walk across the stage but insisted we take family photos where they positioned Heather between them. My first job paid modestly but offered growth potential. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment, furnished it with second-hand finds, and budgeted carefully to make loan payments while building experience. Each family gathering brought questions about when I would find a real job or meet someone nice, as though my professional efforts were merely a placeholder for marriage. Heather graduated with average grades, but an impressive portfolio my parents paid a consultant to help assemble. They gifted her 3 months in Europe as a graduation present to expand her artistic horizons. When she returned, they subsidized her rent in a trendy neighborhood while she found herself professionally. Last October, after 5 years of dedication, I received a significant promotion to senior designer with a modest but meaningful salary increase. I called my parents immediately, hoping this tangible success would finally earn their approval. "That is nice, honey," my mother said distractedly. "Did I tell you Heather is dating a doctor now?" "Well, a medical student, but still." Despite this familiar disappointment, I maintained hope. Christmas was approaching, and I decided to purchase thoughtful gifts for everyone, stretching my budget to buy items I knew they would appreciate. Perhaps tangible expressions of love would finally bridge the gap I had felt my entire life. The silver-wrapped packages in my trunk represented more than gifts. They were a final attempt to earn the recognition I had always craved from my family. As I drove the 120mm home for Christmas, I allowed myself to imagine this visit might be different. Maybe my promotion would finally register as significant. Maybe the expensive wallet for Dad and cashmere scarf for Mom would communicate my success and gratitude. Maybe this would be the Christmas when things finally changed. I was 32 years old and still seeking my parents' approval. That realization should have been warning enough. I arrived at the family home on December 24th, pulling into the driveway behind my father's SUV. The house looked exactly as it always had during the holidays. Multicolored lights outlining the roof, inflatable snowman bobbing in the front yard, and wreath with red velvet bow centered perfectly on the door. The familiarity should have been comforting, but instead, my stomach tightened with the anxiety that always accompanied family visits. My mother opened the door before I could knock, wearing her traditional Christmas apron over a red sweater. "Amanda, you made it," she exclaimed, giving me a quick hug that smelled of cinnamon and vanilla. Come in. Your father is watching the game, and Heather will be here soon with Kyle." I followed her inside, noting how the decorations were exactly the same as they had been throughout my childhood. The same artificial tree in the corner, the same nativity scene on the mantel, the same stockings hanging in birth order. "Robert, Diane, Amanda, Heather, I have got your room ready," Mom said, leading me upstairs. We had to move some storage boxes in there, but I cleared a path to the bed. My childhood bedroom was now half guest room, half storage unit. Cardboard boxes labeled tax documents and holiday decorations lined one wall. The twin bed had a new comforter I had never seen before. And the desk where I had studied for countless exams was now covered with my mother's sewing projects. "It is just for sleeping, right?" Mom said, noticing my expression. "Heather's room is exactly as she left it. Of course, she stays over so much more often than you do." I nodded, placing my overnight bag on the bed. "This is fine, Mom." "Thanks." "Great. Now come help me with dinner preparations. The sweet potatoes need peeling." Downstairs in the kitchen, I fell into the familiar role of assistant while my mother directed the cooking operation. I had been peeling potatoes for 15 minutes when the front door burst open and Heather's voice filled the house. "We are here," she called out. Kyle brought wine. My sister appeared in the kitchen doorway looking effortlessly stylish in designer jeans and a green sweater that complemented her eyes identical to mine, though hers had never spent nights crying over student loan statements. Behind her stood Kyle, tall and handsome in his medical student confidence, holding 2 bottles of wine that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Amanda Heather acknowledged with a quick hug before turning to our mother. "Mom, wait until you see what Kyle got me for Christmas. I am dying to tell you, but he says I have to wait." Mom immediately abandoned the turkey she had been seasoning to give Heather her full attention. "Give me a hint at least." I continued peeling potatoes alone, listening to their excited chatter. My father entered from the living room, bypassing me completely to embrace Heather. "There is my girl," he boomed, then noticed Kyle and extended his hand. "Good to see you again, son. Come watch the game with me. The Vikings are up by 7. "Dad," I called out. "Hi." He turned, seeming to notice me for the first time. "Oh, Amanda, when did you get here?" "About an hour ago." Good. He nodded vaguely. "How is the job?" "Great, actually. I got promoted to senior designer in October. I am managing my own projects now. Drawing buildings pays the bills, huh?" he said with a distracted smile, already turning back toward Kyle. "Come on, son. You are missing the action." The men disappeared into the living room while Heather poured herself and Mom glasses of wine, not offering me any. I returned to the potatoes, wondering why I had expected anything different. By 6:00, Aunt Linda and Uncle Steve arrived with my cousins Jessica and Brian. The house grew louder as more relatives arrived, and I found myself, as usual, in charge of taking coats, refreshing drinks, and making sure the appetizer trays stayed full. So, Amanda, Aunt Linda cornered me by the cheese plate. Still single. Your biological clock is not getting any younger. You know, I am focusing on my career right now, I replied, the rehearsed answer coming automatically. Career is wonderful, but family is everything, she said, patting my arm. Look at your sister and that doctor boyfriend. She has got the right idea. The conversation continued in this vein throughout dinner preparations. No one asked about my promotion or my work. Instead, I fielded questions about dating prospects and gentle suggestions about freezing eggs just in case. My mother enlisted my help setting the table with the family china delicate floral patterned plates that had belonged to my grandmother. As I carefully arranged each place setting, I remembered the time I had accidentally broken one of these plates when I was 11. My father had grounded me for 2 weeks, calling me careless and irresponsible. 3 years later, Heather had thrown a tantrum and swept an entire place setting onto the floor. My parents had simply cleaned it up, assuring her it was just an accident and plates can be replaced. The memory must have shown on my face because my mother paused while placing silverware. Is something wrong? No, I said quickly, just being careful with the china. Good. These plates are irreplaceable family heirlooms except when Heather broke them. Apparently, Christmas Eve dinner was a production of perfectly executed traditions. The turkey was golden brown, the sides abundant, and the conversation focused primarily on Heather's artistic endeavors and Kyle's medical school experiences. When I mentioned a challenging project I had recently completed for a sustainable office building, my father changed the subject to ask Kyle about his residency plans. After dinner came the annual viewing of It Is a Wonderful Life. As always, the seating arrangements left me on the floor, while Heather curled comfortably on the couch between our parents. Kyle got the recliner, being the honored guest. I leaned against the coffee table, feeling the familiar ache in my lower back as the movie progressed. George Bailey's revelation about the value of his life hit differently this year. As I watched the character realize how much he mattered to others, I wondered if anyone would notice if I disappeared. Would my absence leave any hole in this family picture? As the movie ended and people began preparing for bed, I helped clean up while Heather showed Kyle the childhood photo albums. Albums that featured her prominently on every page with me, visible mainly in group shots, often partially cropped out. I went to bed that night in my storage room bedroom, surrounded by boxes of items deemed more worthy of space than my childhood memories. Tomorrow was Christmas Day. One last chance for things to be different. One last opportunity for my family to see me. Sleep came fitfully interrupted by dreams of empty stockings and car keys just beyond my reach. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold sunlight reflecting off fresh snow that had fallen overnight. I woke early as I always did and headed downstairs to start breakfast. This was an unspoken expectation. Amanda handles breakfast while everyone else sleeps in. I mixed pancake batter, fried bacon, and brewed coffee, setting everything out buffet style on the kitchen counter. The smell of food gradually lured everyone downstairs. Heather appeared last, yawning dramatically, her hair somehow perfectly tasseled despite just waking up. Kyle followed close behind, his arm around her waist. "Oh my God, I am starving," Heather announced, piling her plate high. "Amanda, you should have woken me earlier. You know how I get when I am hungry." I did know. The entire family knew. Heather's hunger was always an emergency requiring immediate attention, while I had learned to ignore my own needs entirely. After breakfast, we gathered in the living room around the Christmas tree. The gift exchange followed the same order it had since childhood, youngest to oldest, which meant Heather always went first. This year, with Kyle present, he took the initial turn opening gifts from various family members. He seemed genuinely appreciative of each item, including the leather card holder I had selected for him. Heather went next, tearing through packages with childlike enthusiasm, despite being 25 years old. She opened my gift concert tickets to her favorite band with a quick thanks before moving on to the next package. The tickets had cost nearly half my monthly discretionary budget. but her reaction was identical to when I had given her a $10 candle the previous year. My turn came after all the cousins. I opened gifts methodically expressing gratitude for each item. A generic scarf from Aunt Linda Bath Products from my cousin and a gift card to a department store from my parents. Standard impersonal gifts that could have been given to anyone. Nothing that indicated they knew my preferences or interests. Nothing that reflected the promotion I had been so proud to share. As the opening progressed, I noticed my father repeatedly checking his watch and exchanging glances with my mother. After the last of the regular gifts had been opened, he stood and cleared his throat. "We have got one special surprise this year," he announced, his face breaking into a wide smile. "Heather, your mother and I are so proud of your artistic accomplishments and your bright future. We wanted to do something special to show our support." He handed Heather a small box wrapped in gold paper. Inside was a car key with the Audi logo prominently displayed. Heather screamed, jumping up and down. "No way! No way! Are you serious?" she shrieked. "Come see," my father said, leading everyone toward the front door. We all filed outside where a brand new white Audi A4 sat in the driveway adorned with an enormous red bow. Based on the model and features visible through the window, I estimated it cost at least $35,000 more than I made in an entire year. "You deserve this, sweetheart," my mother said, hugging Heather as she bounced excitedly around the vehicle. "You need reliable transportation for your new gallery internship. The internship that paid nothing but prestige. The internship our parents had secured through connections. The internship Heather had been complaining about because it required getting up too early. Kyle took photos of Heather posing with her new car while my parents beamed proudly. I stood on the porch, arms wrapped around myself against the cold, feeling invisible once again. When we returned inside, thawing our fingers by the fireplace, my mother suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, we almost forgot. Amanda, we have something special for you too." For a brief, irrational moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Perhaps they had been saving my gift for last as well. Perhaps they had recognized my hard work after all. My mother handed me a small box wrapped in leftover birthday paper. It weighed almost nothing. I unwrapped it carefully, lifting the lid to reveal a small pink ceramic piggy bank. Beside it lay a single, crisp $1 bill. I stared at it, waiting for the explanation, the punchline. Anything that would make sense of this gift compared to a luxury vehicle. "That is our contribution to your future home," my mother said, smiling warmly, as though she had given me something precious. "You were just saying last visit how you wanted to buy a house someday." Well, every journey begins with a single step. The room felt awkwardly silent. Even Aunt Linda, who typically filled uncomfortable pauses with chatter, seemed at a loss for words. "Wow, I finally managed. Thanks." "You are welcome, sweetie," my mother continued, oblivious to my shock. "At your age, it is important to start thinking about these things. Heather is younger, so she has more time, but you really should be establishing roots soon." Heather examined her manicure, then offered her own wisdom. "You really should move out of that tiny apartment, Amanda. It is kind of sad for someone your age." My apartment. My hard-earned, independently maintained apartment that no one had ever visited because it was too far to drive. The apartment I paid for entirely on my own while Heather had her rent subsidized by our parents. "I need some fresh air," I said, standing abruptly. No one tried to stop me as I walked out the back door into the yard. Snow crunched beneath my boots as I made my way to the old maple tree where my childhood swing still hung. I sat down the cold chains biting through my gloves and finally allowed the tears to fall. 32 years of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. 32 years of watching Heather receive everything I had ever wanted. 32 years of telling myself next time would be different. The piggy bank and single dollar weren't just disappointing gifts. They were a message clear as the winter sky above me. You are on your own. You always have been. As the cold seeped through my jeans and the tears froze on my cheeks, something inside me finally broke. But in that breaking came clarity. This would never change. The dynamic was too entrenched, too comfortable for everyone involved. Everyone except me. If I wanted something different, I would have to create it myself. I remained on the swing until my fingers grew numb and my tears subsided. The decision crystallized slowly. Then all at once, I could not return to that house and continue pretending. Something had to change, and since my family would not, I must. Walking back inside, I passed through the kitchen where dirty breakfast dishes still sat in the sink dishes. No one but me would think to wash. Upstairs, I could hear Heather chattering excitedly on the phone, presumably telling friends about her new car. From the living room came the sounds of a football game and my father's occasional commentary. No one had noticed my absence. No one had come to check if I was okay. I climbed the stairs to my storage room bedroom and closed the door quietly. Sitting on the bed, I pulled out my phone and called my best friend Samantha. "Merry Christmas," she answered cheerfully. "How is the family circus this year, Sam?" My voice cracked. It happened again. Worse than ever, I explained about the car versus piggy bank. My voice shaking despite my efforts to remain composed. "Are you kidding me?" Samantha's outrage was immediate and validating. "A piggy bank while your sister gets a freaking Audi. That is beyond inappropriate, Amanda. That is cruel." "I know," I whispered. "I cannot do this anymore." "Then do not," she replied simply. "My guest room is yours for as long as you need it. Seattle is only 3 hours from Portland. Your company has an office here. Make the change." The suggestion so straightforward hit me with unexpected force. I could leave, not just today, but permanently. I could put physical distance between myself and the source of so much pain. "But Christmas," I began, then stopped. What was I protecting? The illusion of family harmony, the tradition of my own diminishment. "Christmas will happen with or without you there," Samantha said gently. "The question is whether you want to spend another minute feeling this way when you have other options." After we hung up, I sat in silence, contemplating the magnitude of what I was considering. My job could indeed transfer me to the Seattle office. I had been offered that option during my promotion, but declined to stay close to family. My apartment lease renewed month to month. There were no real barriers except the emotional ties I had spent a lifetime strengthening despite constant evidence they were not reciprocated. I opened my suitcase and began methodically packing not just the few items I had brought for the holiday visit, but select belongings from my childhood that remained in this room. My high school graduation tassel, a photo album of my college friends, a small wooden box my grandfather had made for me before he passed. As I sorted through drawers, I found old journals from my teenage years. Flipping through them revealed a heartbreaking pattern entry after entry, expressing confusion and hurt over my parents' favoritism, followed by self-blame and promises to try harder, be better, earn the love they gave Heather freely. I considered confronting my family, laying out these years of pain and asking for acknowledgement. The thought exhausted me. What would it accomplish? More denials, more gaslighting, more subtle suggestions that my perceptions were flawed. Better to channel that energy into building something new. On a sheet of stationery from the desk, I wrote a brief note. "I am returning to Seattle today." The contrast between Heather's gift and mine made some things very clear to me. I need space to process our family dynamic and what role, if any, I want it to play in my future. Please do not contact me for a while, Amanda. No apologies, no detailed explanations that would only be twisted or dismissed. Just the simple truth and a boundary, perhaps the first real boundary I had ever set with my family. I folded the note and placed it on my made bed. Then I gathered my suitcase and the small box of mementos and quietly made my way downstairs. The family remained gathered in the living room, now watching a Christmas movie marathon. No one looked up as I passed the doorway. In the kitchen, I placed the note prominently on the counter where someone would eventually find it. I looked around at the familiar space the refrigerator covered with Heather's childhood artwork, the height chart on the wall that stopped tracking my growth after age 10, but continued with Heather's measurements until she left for college. The bulletin board displaying Heather's gallery internship acceptance letter, but nothing of my recent promotion. This house contained no evidence that I mattered here. Perhaps it never had. I loaded my belongings into my car, a 7-year-old Honda I had purchased entirely on my own. Before getting in, I stood in the driveway looking at the house, decorated with twinkling lights, smoke rising gently from the chimney, the perfect holiday card image hiding years of invisible wounds. Next to my car sat Heather's gleaming new Audi, the giant red bow still attached. I removed the piggy bank from my coat pocket and placed it carefully on my dashboard, a reminder of why I was leaving and why I should not look back. Snow had begun falling again as I backed out of the driveway. Large, soft flakes descended in the gathering dusk, muffling the world in white silence. Through the living room window, I could see my family silhouetted against the television's glow, unaware that their oldest daughter was driving out of their lives. The mixture of grief and liberation that flooded through me was overwhelming. Tears blurred my vision as I turned onto the main road, but I did not stop. For the first time in 32 years, I was choosing myself. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to travel on my own terms. 3 blocks away, I pulled over briefly to enter Samantha's address into my GPS. 3 hours to Seattle. 3 hours to a new beginning. As I merged onto the highway, heading north through the snow, I finally allowed myself to say aloud what I had known for years, but never admitted. They do not love me the way I need to be loved, and that is not my fault. The words hung in the car like a spell breaking, releasing me from decades of trying to earn what should have been my birthright. I turned on the radio, found a station playing anything but Christmas music, and pointed my car toward the future. 2 hours into my drive north, the snow had intensified, reducing visibility and forcing me to slow to 45 mph. The interstate stretched ahead a narrow corridor of headlights and taillights through the swirling white. My phone, which had been silent since my departure, suddenly buzzed against the cup holder. I glanced down, expecting a message from Samantha, checking on my progress. Instead, my mother's name appeared on the screen with a text that knocked the breath from my lungs. Do not forget to pay the utility bills due on the 28th. Not where are you or are you safe or please come back. Just a reminder about bills. Bills for my apartment that I had never once forgotten to pay. Bills that represented the independent life she had just mocked with that piggy bank. I stared at the message in disbelief until a car horn startled me back to attention. I refocused on the road, hands shaking on the steering wheel. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my father. Internet payment processes tomorrow. Make sure there is enough in your account. Again, no concern for my whereabouts or well-being. Just financial reminders as though my only value to them was my responsibility, the trait they had forced upon me since childhood while freeing Heather from similar expectations. The phone began ringing next, my mother calling. I let it go to voicemail, then listened as she left a message in a tone more annoyed than worried. Amanda, where did you go? We are about to have dessert and your aunt is asking for you. This is very inconsiderate timing. Inconsiderate timing, as though my emotional breaking point should have been scheduled more conveniently for the family. More calls followed, which I continued to ignore. The voicemails progressed from irritation to confusion. Your note is very dramatic, my mother said in her second message. I do not understand why you would leave on Christmas Day over a simple gift. The piggy bank was cute. Not everything has to be expensive to be meaningful. Then came my father, Amanda. Your mother is upset now. I do not know what has gotten into you, but this behavior is childish. Call us back immediately. Finally, Heather, way to ruin Christmas. Amanda, Mom and Dad did nothing wrong. You are just jealous of my car, which is super selfish of you. They have always given you everything you needed. Each message twisted the knife deeper. Even now, they could not see me or my pain. Even now, they dismissed my feelings and defended their actions. Even now, it was about how my reaction affected them, not how their actions had affected me for decades. I pulled off at the next exit, no longer trusting myself to drive safely through the storm of snow and emotions. A roadside diner glowed warmly against the winter darkness, Gloria's all-day breakfast in flickering neon. I parked and went inside, seeking warmth and momentary refuge. The diner was nearly empty on Christmas evening. An elderly waitress with silver hair and kind eyes approached my booth. "Merry Christmas, honey." Traveling in this weather, she placed a menu before me and filled a mug with coffee without asking. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. She studied my face for a moment, then said gently, "Looks like you could use more than coffee. Kitchen is still open if you need something warm." "Thank you," I managed, my voice cracking slightly. "Just the coffee for now." She nodded and moved away, giving me space. I wrapped my cold hands around the mug, staring into the dark liquid as if it might contain answers. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. "Your behavior is very hurtful to your father and me after everything we have done for you. Everything they had done for me. The bare minimum parenting while lavishing Heather with advantages. The constant message that I was not quite enough, not quite worthy of the same love and support. The expectation that I would be eternally grateful for crumbs while Heather feasted." Something inside me broke open, and I began to cry quiet, shuddering sobs that I tried to muffle with my napkin. The waitress returned, sliding into the booth across from me without invitation. She pushed a plate with a slice of pie toward me. "On the house," she said. "I do not know what you are going through, but nobody should cry alone on Christmas." Her simple kindness undid me completely. I cried harder, decades of suppressed hurt flowing out in a diner booth before a stranger showing more concern than my family ever had. "I left my family today," I finally said, wiping my eyes. "For good, I think." The waitress, Gloria, according to her name tag, nodded. "I walked away from my family when I was 27. Hardest and best thing I ever did." "Does it get easier?" I asked. "The guilt fades," she said. "The relief grows. Eventually, you build something better." We talked as I ate the pineapple with a perfect crust. Gloria shared her own story of family dysfunction and the life she had created afterward. She was 72 now, had owned this diner for 30 years, and had formed a chosen family of friends who celebrated holidays together. "Blood makes you related," she told me. "Love and respect make you family. Some people are lucky enough to have both in the same people. The rest of us have to find our real family as we go." By the time I finished my pie and second cup of coffee, the snow had slowed to gentle flurries. Gloria insisted I take a piece of pie to go and made me promise to call someone when I reached my destination safely. "The weather report says this storm is getting worse overnight," she warned. "There is a decent motel 2 exits up if you need to stop." I thanked her, paid for my coffee despite her protests, and left a tip that made her eyes widen. Some kindnesses deserved recognition, a lesson my family had never learned. Back in my car, I checked the forecast on my phone. Gloria was right. Conditions were expected to deteriorate significantly in the next few hours. I called Samantha. "Hey," I said when she answered, "I am about 100 miles south of Seattle, but the weather is bad. I think I should stop for the night." "Definitely," she agreed. "Safety first. I will have the guest room ready whenever you get here tomorrow." Following Gloria's advice, I found the motel and checked in for the night. The room was basic, but clean: a bed, a dresser, a small bathroom. I sat cross-legged on the bed and for the first time allowed myself to really think about what I had done and what came next. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to my supervisor requesting a transfer to the Seattle office, citing family circumstances. Then I began researching apartments in Seattle, making lists of neighborhoods to consider, calculating budgets, and mapping out a plan. The practical tasks calmed me, giving shape to my nebulous decision. By midnight, I had a preliminary roadmap for my new life transfer paperwork, ready to submit 3 apartment viewings scheduled for the coming week, and a list of items I would need to retrieve from my Portland apartment. I fell asleep that night to the sound of wind howling outside my window, carrying away the last remnants of the life I had endured for too long. Morning brought clear skies but frigid temperatures. After a quick breakfast at the motel restaurant, I called my supervisor despite it being December 26th. "Amanda, everything okay?" she answered, sounding concerned about the holiday call. "I need to request that transfer to Seattle. We discussed during my promotion," I explained. "Family circumstances have changed suddenly. I can work remotely until the transfer is processed." To my relief, she was understanding and supportive. "The Seattle office has been asking for someone with your skills. I can make this happen by January 15th. Will that work?" One administrative hurdle cleared. As I prepared to continue my journey, my car made an ominous clicking sound when I turned the key. After 3 attempts, it reluctantly started, but a warning light glowed on the dashboard. 10 mi down the highway, the engine began making a concerning noise. I took the next exit into a small town called Maplewood and found an auto shop open despite the holiday week. The mechanic, a middle-aged man named Marcus, with grease-stained hands and kind eyes, examined my car while I waited anxiously in the small office. "Alternator is going," he announced after 20 minutes. "I can fix it, but I will need to order the part. 2 days, maybe 3 with the holiday." I must have looked stricken because he quickly added, "There is a decent hotel in town walking distance from here, and I will give you a fair price on the repair." Promise. Another delay. Another unexpected expense. But also, I realized another opportunity to practice my new resolution, facing problems directly rather than suffering in silence. "Thank you," I told Marcus. "I appreciate your honesty." While waiting for my car, I explored Maplewood, a charming town of Victorian buildings and small businesses decorated for the holidays. In a coffee shop, I opened my laptop and began the process of setting boundaries with my family. I blocked their numbers on my phone, set up email filters to send their messages to a separate folder. I could check when emotionally prepared and removed them from my social media. Each action was both painful and liberating, like lancing a wound to allow healing to begin. On December 29th, with my car repaired and the roads clear, I finally completed my journey to Seattle. Samantha met me at the door of her apartment building with a hug so fierce it nearly knocked me over. "Welcome to your new life," she said, helping me carry my belongings inside. That night, we sat on her couch drinking wine and talking until 3 o'clock in the morning. I cried, I laughed, I raged about decades of accumulated hurts. Samantha listened without judgment, offering validation instead of the dismissal I had grown accustomed to from family. "You know what the worst part is?" I told her as the night grew late. "A part of me still hopes they will suddenly realize what they have done and apologize." "How pathetic is that?" "Not pathetic," Samantha said firmly. "Human, we are programmed to seek connection with our parents. It takes time to accept when that connection is unhealthy." I fell asleep that night on Samantha's guest bed, exhausted, but peaceful. For the first time in memory, I had prioritized my own well-being over my family's expectations. The road ahead would be challenging, but for once it was mine to choose. The piggy bank sat on the nightstand, no longer a symbol of dismissal, but a reminder of the moment I had finally decided I deserved more. January in Seattle brought perpetual rain and the beginning of my reconstruction. The first week at Samantha's apartment was an exercise in decompression, sleeping late, taking long walks under my umbrella, and gradually acknowledging the extent of the emotional damage I had normalized throughout my life. My phone remained mercifully silent after I had blocked my family's numbers, but emails accumulated in the special folder I had created subject lines ranging from, "Your behavior is unacceptable," to, "Are you safe to bills past due?" I skimmed them occasionally, but did not respond, giving myself permission to heal before engaging. With Samantha's encouragement, I began exploring Seattle neighborhoods during breaks in the rain. The city's moody skies and evergreen landscape felt appropriately transitional. Neither the familiar territory of Portland nor completely foreign ground, a middle space for my middle state. The transfer paperwork came through. I told Samantha one evening over takeout Thai food. I start at the Seattle office next Monday. That calls for celebration, she declared, pouring more wine to new beginnings. My first week at the Seattle office exceeded expectations. My new colleagues welcomed my experience, and the creative director seemed genuinely impressed by my portfolio. For the first time, I found myself in an environment where my contributions were valued without qualification or comparison. We have got a major pitch next month for West Side development. The director told me after my first week, I would like you to take point on the sustainable elements. Your work on the Portland Eco Office project was exactly what we need. Recognition, opportunity, trust, simple professional courtesies that nonetheless felt revolutionary after years of being overlooked. With my job secure, I turned my attention to finding my own place. Samantha had been an incredible support, but I needed to establish independence in my new city. After viewing several apartments, I found a one-bedroom in Capitol Hill, slightly more expensive than my Portland place, but walking distance to work and filled with natural light. Perfect for my architectural sketches. This is definitely you, Samantha said, helping me arrange furniture the weekend I moved in. I can already see your personality here. My personality, not an afterthought to Heather's more valued existence, not a responsible counterpoint to her creative spirit, just me defined on my own terms. 3 weeks after my departure, my family discovered my new location through a careless social media post where a colleague tagged me at a Seattle networking event. The carefully constructed dam broke, flooding my phone with voicemails and texts from unknown numbers they were using to bypass my blocks. Amanda, this has gone on long enough. My father's message began. Your mother is beside herself with worry. This silent treatment is childish and cruel. My mother's approach pivoted to health concerns. My blood pressure is through the roof because of this situation. Is that what you want to make me sick with worry? Heather predictably made it about herself. My car keeps making this weird noise, and Dad cannot afford to take it to the dealer because he is stressed about you. Thanks a lot. Each message attempted to pull me back into the family dynamic. The responsible daughter who should feel guilty for causing problems, who should set aside her own needs to maintain harmony, who should accept less because wanting more was selfish. I drafted dozens of responses, but sent none. Instead, I printed the emails, took them to my first therapy session, and read them aloud to Dr. Keller, a compassionate woman with silver-streaked hair who specialized in family trauma. What do you notice about these messages? She asked after I finished reading. They are all about how my absence affects them, I replied. None of them acknowledge why I left. Exactly, she nodded. That pattern seems familiar to you. It is the story of my entire life. Over the following weeks, therapy became my anchor as I navigated establishing boundaries while processing decades of emotional neglect. Dr. Keller helped me understand that my parents' behavior reflected their own limitations, not my worthiness. You cannot make people give what they do not have or recognize what they cannot see. She told me during one particularly difficult session, your responsibility is to honor your own truth, not to contort yourself into shapes that make others comfortable. February brought new connections beyond Samantha. I joined an architectural society that met monthly to discuss innovations in sustainable design. I found a book club that gathered in a cozy bookstore near my apartment. I started taking a pottery class on Sunday afternoons, something I had always wanted to try but had dismissed as impractical. Slowly, I began building a community of people who saw me, who valued my contributions, who did not measure me against an idealized sister or impossible standard. My career flourished in this new environment. The West Side development pitch succeeded largely due to my sustainable design elements earning me recognition from senior management and a bonus that I used to buy real furniture instead of the second-hand pieces that had followed me from Portland. We are putting you forward for the Emerson Green Design Award, my director announced in March. Your innovation on the wildlife corridor integration was exactly what the committee looks for. Professional validation felt foreign but wonderful, like wearing a beautiful coat that I kept checking to make sure truly belonged to me. As my confidence grew professionally, so did my ability to maintain boundaries personally. I began responding selectively to family communications, keeping messages brief and factual without being drawn into emotional manipulation. "I am safe and well," I wrote in response to my mother's increasingly frantic emails. "I need space to process our relationship. I will reach out when I am ready for more communication." This measured response triggered an escalation. Relatives I barely spoke to began messaging me about breaking your poor mother's heart. My father's emails became stern lectures about family obligation and gratitude. Heather vacillated between angry accusations and tearful pleas depending on her mood. Then came the nuclear option. My Aunt Linda shared that my mother had been hospitalized with chest pains, strongly implying it was my fault for causing her stress. The old Amanda would have immediately abandoned her boundaries and rushed home, accepting blame and responsibility. The new Amanda called the hospital, directly confirmed my mother had been treated for indigestion and released the same day, then resumed her life without guilt. In April, just as I was finding my rhythm in Seattle, my father appeared unannounced at my office building. I spotted him in the lobby as I returned from lunch, looking older and more haggarded than I remembered, clutching a manila envelope and scanning faces as people entered. My initial instinct was to hide to avoid the confrontation. Instead, I approached him directly. "Dad," I said simply, "how did you find my workplace?" He turned momentarily startled, then composed himself. "Your cousin works in HR." She looked up the company transfer records, a privacy violation I would address later. "Why are you here?" "We need to talk," he said properly, not through text messages and emails. I nodded toward a coffee shop across the street. 20 minutes. That is all I can give you during my workday." The cafe was busy enough to ensure our conversation would remain civil. We sat at a corner table, an untouched Americano before him, a green tea steaming between my hands. "Your mother and I do not understand why you have done this," he began without preamble. "Running away over a Christmas gift seems extreme. Even for you. Even for you." The implied criticism was so familiar, I almost smiled. Some things never changed. "It was not about the gift," I said quietly. "The gift was merely the final example of a lifelong pattern." "What pattern?" His genuine confusion was perhaps the most painful part. "Heather receives a $35,000 car. I receive a piggy bank and $1. Can you truly not see the disparity?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Heather needed a car. You have your Honda, a car I bought myself. Just like I paid for my education, my apartment, my entire life. While you and Mom gave Heather everything. That is not fair, Amanda. We raised you, put food on the table, kept a roof over your head. You did the legal minimum for me while giving Heather every advantage. College tuition, rent support, European trips, now a luxury car. You were always the responsible one," he countered. "You never needed the help." "I needed the recognition," I said, my voice finally breaking. "I needed to know I mattered as much as she did, that my efforts were seen, that I was loved equally, not just assigned the role of responsible child." While Heather got to be precious, my father stared into his coffee, silent for a long moment. When he looked up, his expression held a mixture of defensiveness and dawning realization. "We never meant to make you feel less important," he said finally. "Your mother and I are proud of you. You have always been so capable, so independent. Independence forced upon a child is not a gift, Dad. It is an abandonment." He had no response to that. We sat in uncomfortable silence until I checked my watch and stood. "I have to get back to work. I have a client meeting. Will you come home?" he asked. "Your mother misses you." "This is my home now," I replied. "I am building a life here, a good one. And we are not part of it." His voice held genuine hurt. "I do not know yet," I answered honestly. That depends on whether you and Mom can respect who I actually am, rather than who you needed me to be for Heather's sake. I left him sitting there, returning to my office with shaking hands, but a clear conscience. For the first time, I had spoken my truth without apologizing for it, without minimizing it to make someone else comfortable. That night, I added another $1 to the piggy bank that now sat on my windowsill. $1 for each week I had maintained my boundaries. $13 that represented not financial growth, but personal strength, the most valuable currency I had ever possessed. May brought an invitation. I had been dreading my cousin Jessica's wedding scheduled for June in Portland. The cream-colored envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I finally opened it, running my finger over the embossed floral design while contemplating what my response would be. Jessica and I had been close as children before growing apart in adulthood. She had sent a kind message after my departure. One of the few relatives who had not pressured me to return or dismissed my feelings. Declining her invitation felt wrong. Yet attending meant facing my entire family on their territory. "You do not have to decide right now," Dr. Keller said during our session that week. "Consider what boundaries would make attendance possible for you." I spent a week contemplating those boundaries, then made my decision. I RSVP'd yes to the wedding, but booked a hotel room rather than staying with family. I requested a +1 and invited Samantha as my support person. I scheduled our arrival for the day of the wedding and our departure for the following morning, minimizing potential family entanglements. Control over these details gave me the confidence to face what was coming. This would be a brief, structured re-entry into my family orbit with a clear escape route. Nothing like the unbalanced dynamic I had endured for decades. The weeks before the wedding passed quickly, filled with work on a new sustainable housing development and weekends exploring Seattle with new friends. My life had developed rhythms and relationships that nourished rather than depleted me. Each day reinforced my decision to leave and build something healthier. June 17th arrived sunny and mild. Samantha and I drove to Portland, arriving at our hotel with just enough time to change before the 4 o'clock ceremony. "Remember," Samantha said as we prepared to leave for the venue, "you can leave any situation that becomes uncomfortable. I will follow your lead." The ceremony took place in a garden overlooking the Willamette River. I spotted my family immediately, my parents sitting rigidly in the 3rd row. Heather beside them looking subdued in a blue dress, significantly less flashy than her usual style. I guided Samantha to seats on the opposite side, nodding politely to relatives but avoiding direct contact. Jessica made a beautiful bride, her face radiant as she exchanged vows with her partner. Watching her joy, I felt a pang of something like envy, not for the marriage itself, but for the uncomplicated happiness. She seemed entitled to feel the celebration unmarred by family dysfunction. The reception was held in a renovated warehouse with exposed beams and string lights. Samantha and I found our assigned table, thankfully populated by Jessica's college friends rather than family members. We made pleasant conversation through dinner, and I began to think I might escape the event without significant family interaction. That hope evaporated when my mother appeared beside our table during dessert, her expression a carefully composed mask of casualness. "Amanda," she said, her voice slightly too loud, "could I speak with you for a moment in private?" Samantha squeezed my hand under the table. I nodded, following my mother to a quiet corner near the bar. "You look well," she began, eyes scanning my face, as if searching for signs of distress that would validate her narrative of my breakdown. "Cattle must agree with you." "It does," I replied simply. "Congratulations to Jessica. The wedding is lovely." "We have missed you," she continued, ignoring my attempt at neutral conversation. "Your father has not been the same since your departure." I noticed she avoided any mention of Christmas or the catalyst for my leaving. "How have you been, Mom? How do you think?" A flash of the familiar guilt technique. My daughter disappeared from my life with barely a word. Holidays have been terrible. Heather is struggling too. I took a deep breath, centering myself in the boundary work I had practiced for months, I left a note explaining I needed space. I have responded to messages confirming my safety. I have been clear about my needs. But why? She finally asked, frustration breaking through. What did we do that was so terrible you had to move to another city? The question was so genuine, her bewilderment so complete, that I momentarily doubted my own experience. Had I imagined the years of differential treatment? Had I overreacted to the piggy bank incident? That self-doubt was the old pattern reasserting itself. Mom, I said carefully, we should not have this conversation here at Jessica's wedding. Then when you will just disappear again tomorrow. I considered my options. Perhaps facing this directly was the only way forward. Tomorrow morning, I decided. Breakfast at my hotel, 9:00 a.m. You, Dad, and me. We can talk then. She nodded, relief visible in her shoulders. We will be there. I returned to Samantha, who raised an eyebrow in question. Family breakfast tomorrow, I explained. The reckoning has been scheduled. Later that evening, as the reception wound down, Heather approached me near the coat check. She looked different, thinner, less confident, her designer clothes replaced by something more modest. Hey, she said awkwardly. Your hair looks nice. Shorter? Thanks, I replied, unsure how to navigate this interaction. How have you been? She shrugged, looking down at her shoes. No longer expensive heels, but practical flats. The car got repossessed. Dad lost his job in February. Things are kind of a mess. The news surprised me, but also explained my father's haggarded appearance. I am sorry to hear that. Yeah, well, she twisted her fingers together nervously. I got a real job finally, receptionist at a dentist office. Not glamorous, but it pays regularly. That is good, I said, genuinely pleased for her. Stability is underrated. She glanced up, meeting my eyes directly. I did not understand before why you left. I thought you were just jealous of the car. It was never about the car, Heather. I know that now. She hesitated, then added quietly, I never realized how much they did for me until they could not anymore. Or how little they did for you. I am sorry I was part of that. Her acknowledgement, however, belated, loosened something tight in my chest. Thank you for saying that. We parted with an awkward half-hug, not quite reconciled, but perhaps on the path toward understanding. Back at the hotel, I prepared mentally for the morning's confrontation, listing key points I wanted to express without being derailed by emotion or manipulation. You have done the work, Samantha reminded me before retreating to her adjoining room. You are not the same person who left at Christmas. My parents arrived precisely at 9:00 dressed formally as if for church rather than a difficult conversation. We sat at a corner table in the hotel restaurant, the remains of my continental breakfast pushed aside to make room for the emotional feast about to be served. Thank you for coming. I began taking control of the narrative immediately. I think it is important we discuss what happened at Christmas and the years leading up to it. My father cleared his throat. Amanda, first I want to say that I lost my position at the firm. The economic downturn hit us hard. Your mother has taken a part-time job to help with expenses. I am truly sorry about your job, Dad, I said sincerely. That must be difficult. We had to sell the Audi, my mother added. Heather was very upset, but we had no choice. I nodded, waiting for them to connect these developments to our larger conversation. When they did not, I realized I would need to guide them. I left at Christmas because the disparity between Heather's gift and mine symbolized a lifetime of unequal treatment. I stated plainly, the car versus piggy bank was simply the final evidence that I would never be valued equally in our family. That is ridiculous, my father began. But my mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. I never thought of it that way, she said slowly. The piggy bank was just a joke, really. Something cute. Would you have given Heather a piggy bank and $1 while giving me a $35,000 car? I asked. The question hung in the air unanswerable because we all knew the truth. We never meant to make you feel less loved. my mother finally said, her voice small. You were always so capable, so independent. Heather needed more guidance, more support. I was independent because I had to be, I replied, keeping my voice steady. No one was going to do things for me the way you both did for Heather. I learned that lesson very early. My father looked uncomfortable but finally spoke. Perhaps we took your responsibility for granted. You never complained. I complained constantly. I corrected him. You just never listened, or you dismissed my feelings as jealousy or pettiness. We were doing our best. My mother said, tears forming. Parents are not perfect. I know that I acknowledged. I do not expect perfection, but I do expect awareness and a willingness to acknowledge when patterns are harmful. We talked for nearly 2 hours covering painful memories and patterns that had defined our family dynamic. My parents oscillated between defensiveness and genuine remorse as the conversation progressed. They had not come prepared to accept full responsibility, but neither did they completely deny my experience. What happens now? My father asked as we prepared to leave. Will you come back to Portland? No, I said firmly. My life is in Seattle now. A good life that I have built for myself. Will we see you again? My mother's voice wavered. Yes, I decided in that moment, but on different terms. I cannot and will not return to the old dynamic. If you want a relationship with me, it must be one of mutual respect and equal standing. They nodded, neither fully understanding nor completely rejecting the new boundaries I had established. Perhaps you could visit Seattle sometime, I offered, see my apartment, meet some of my friends. A small opening, carefully controlled, the beginning of a new kind of relationship if they were willing to build it. We parted with brief hugs, less emotional than practical acknowledgement of a connection that remained but had fundamentally changed form. As Samantha and I drove north toward Seattle that afternoon, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because everything was resolved or healed, it was not and might never be completely, but because I had finally spoken my truth without diminishing it. Proud of you, Samantha said as the Portland skyline receded in our rearview mirror. 1 year after my Christmas departure, my life had transformed completely. My Seattle apartment now felt truly like home, decorated with art from local markets and furniture I had chosen deliberately rather than accepted out of necessity. My career had flourished with the Emerson Award proudly displayed on my desk and a promotion to design team leader. More importantly, I had built connections that nourished rather than depleted me. Friends who celebrated my successes without competition. Colleagues who valued my contributions. Even a promising relationship with Marcus, an environmental engineer I had met through work. That Christmas, I hosted dinner in my apartment for a chosen family. Samantha and her boyfriend, 2 colleagues from the architecture firm, my neighbor who taught pottery, and Gloria from the diner who had become an unexpected pen pal, mentor. My relationship with my biological family remained complicated but evolving. My parents had visited once, awkwardly navigating the new boundaries, but making genuine efforts. Heather and I exchanged occasional texts, building a tentative relationship independent of our parents' influence. On my mantle, the pink piggy bank sat prominently displayed, now filled with dollar bills, not as a savings strategy, but as a symbol. Each dollar represented a week of maintaining healthy boundaries, of choosing myself, of recognizing my own worth without external validation. That night, after my guests had gone, and I sat alone, watching the Seattle skyline twinkle through light rain, I added the 50-second dollar to the bank. 1 full year of self-respect. The piggy bank that was intended as a dismissal had become my most meaningful possession. A reminder that sometimes you must leave what is familiar to find what is healthy. That painful endings can lead to better beginnings. And that your indicted value is inherent, not determined by others' ability to recognize it. As I prepare to begin my 2nd year in Seattle, I wonder about your stories of finding self-worth. Have you ever had to leave something behind to discover your true value? What symbols remind you of your strength and resilience? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by others. Thank you for being part of my journey. And remember, sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to begin again.